Brewing Inc. is now syndicated on SeriousWriter.com. See them at SeriousWriter.com for resources, articles, videos, topical classes, and now a podcast, the Brewing Inc. Podcast, because we're syndicated on SeriousRider.com.
All right, and welcome back, faithful listeners, to another episode of Brewing Inc.
Welcome back, everybody.
Yes.
We've taken a little break.
It's been a little bit. The holidays were busy, and then after that, there was some sickness that was going around.
There was some sickness, and there's maybe some more sickness coming around in the future with this whole coronavirus.
Yeah, that's
we don't need to talk too much about it, but no. It's been quite the topic of conversation in my household.
I still have all my hazmat suit and face mask from when Ebola was breaking out.
Oh, yeah? Not SARS?
No, yeah, that was even before then. Yeah. No, that's great. That's been crazy,
too. We finished the season of Singularity, which was amazing, and we're putting together an ebook for that now for everyone who's might be interested.
Yep.
And then we just kind of had to take a little break for some sickness and just to kind of retool. We're still retooling, I think.
Yep.
And I had to take a little time
but it's been,
to finish some books.
Yeah. You finished off the third?
I finished off 4 books in like 3 months.
Fourth, yeah.
Or 3 or 4 months, yeah.
Yeah. So that'll be good because you're going to have a lot of those coming out this year. And then this gives us an opportunity to knock out a bunch of these Interbrew reviews that we've been wanting to do.
Right.
We're going to be talking about The Witcher today, and a couple episodes from now we'll be doing the Rise of Skywalker, and these are all films that came out over the holidays, and we've just been chomping at the bits to get them done.
Yeah, so The Witcher has been really interesting because I was not that familiar with it.
Yeah.
Before I watched it on Netflix.
Yeah.
Now, I knew about The Witcher, mostly from the games. And I mean, I knew there were books, but I just have to admit, I'm not geeky enough, I guess. I didn't read the books yet. I hadn't read the books.
Yeah.
And so when I saw that it was coming out, obviously I was interested because it looked like fantasy and it was gritty and a little dark kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I was really interested, but I think it's been pretty engaging to see how people have responded. Like it's still one of the top shows
on
streamed
Netflix right now.
Not just on Netflix,
period.
just in period.
Oh,
like it's become one of the top streamed shows. Like it's up there with, I think it beat like Stranger Things, and it's beat like a lot of huge shows.
I saw that.
Yeah.
And before we dive into it, let's talk about what we're drinking here
please.
tonight. We've got a Scofflaw Double Jeopardy Indian Pale Ale. And really the choice for this beer right here was the artwork that's on the box, because it looked like something that Geralt would be hunting down and paid to kill. It's like a double-faced goat creature.
Toss a coin to the Witcher to kill this IPA.
Yes, to kill this IPA. Yeah, so we are considering ourselves Witcher right now as we down this beer.
Yeah, right.
Someone should pay us.
Do we have to use a voice?
Yeah. So, without further ado, I'm going to give us a little musical interlude.
Ooh, please.
Yes.
I wonder what you'll play.
Okay, so how often was that song stuck in your head after you?
Oh, several times.
Yes.
And so let's just kind of give everybody a little background here. Steven and I have both watched the show.
Yes.
Steven is more of a video game guy than me.
Yeah.
So you have played how many of the games? All of them?
No. I started on the third one, but I have been familiar with the games. I've followed along with like kind of 1 and 2 and the storyline. My brother-in-law was playing them all, and so I'd watch him play.
Right.
So I was very familiar with the whole setting, and I was holding off on buying 3 until it was on sale. And guess what? After the Netflix series came out, it went on sale. Like $15 for both the DLCs and the main game. So my brother-in-law was like, I paid over $100 for all that. And I was like, yeah, I paid $15. But so
that was a little Napoleon Dynamite, what you did right there.
Yeah.
That was a little Napoleon. Man, your mom goes to college.
Yeah. So I'm very interested in it, and I've been familiar with the book series because it's been all vicariously through my brother-in-law. He was really big into it. He was reading the books, and we would have these conversations about it, but I hadn't dipped my toes into the water really until the Netflix series came out. But it was something that I knew and I was very familiar with. I think one of the things that really makes it an engaging endeavor is the fact that there is now multiple ways to enjoy it. There's the video game, now there's the Netflix series, and then there's been the books for a while.
Yeah.
And you're more of an avid reader.
I'm a little more of a reader. I'm definitely the kind of guy who's got piles of books at home that I will never probably get to all of them.
Right.
My wife rolls her eyes, but my wife realizes if this is the worst fetish I have in life is just a lot of books. Like she's pretty lucky, as far as things go. But no, I've read the first book, most of the first book, and I just haven't finished it yet. But I started it on Friday. I started it recently. But obviously, I waited to get it from the library, so there's a lot of people who've been wanting to read it.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to get through it quickly so I can get it back, before it's due, because obviously there's probably people in line after me. But no, the book has been really cool, and it's kind of, we don't need to spend too much time about it, but it's kind of part of that whole idea that nowadays, in order to become pretty successful, you almost need to have different ways for people to get engaged with it, like a video game and a show or cartoon or whatever. Like there's different ways, or board game, or there's different ways for people to get involved with your world, and you really got to flesh out that world. And that is something I really got to give. I forget his name, Andrew or whatever.
Sapowski is the author's name.
I really got to give him credit because he obviously from day one had that world and that all the stuff. He had a lot of that stuff already worked out,
right,
in his head. The history and what was going to happen and what witchers were and what elves were like and what dwarves were like. And so some of that was borrowed. And as I'm reading it, I'm thinking, man, this is really similar to what I did with The Living Stone. Like, he kind of took, it's not just like it, but he kind of took a lot of those
political
Dungeons and Dragons kind of characters, more from the Tolkienish world, and kind of turned some stuff on its head, made it more political, made it a little more dark here and there. It was a lot of what I did with the Eris Chronicles stuff that I wrote, which is where I turned a lot of that stuff on its head, made it more political, and made it more kind of a modern kind of structure of what was going on, and said things about history. And he's doing a lot of the same things, and obviously he's got a little more that he wants to say, or something different. Anyway, so I have been finding the books really interesting and really fun, and really well done overall. Like, some of the scenes are really well written, and I'm really enjoying the books because I'm like, like some of these characters that they put in the show, I'm like, they didn't just throw these characters in the show. Like, some of these characters in the show were really characters straight out of the book. Right. Now, they might have
played
changed
with how,
them or
how
played
they met
with,
or timing of things.
But anyway, so.
And what's funny is he actually was writing his first version of this Witcher character and story for a competition around the same time that George R.R. Martin was writing the Game of Thrones series. So they were like in the same competition or whatever.
Yeah, interesting.
And Martin, I believe, won or something like that. Or like he gained more popularity first, but they were basically
contemporaries or
yes,
whatever.
They were basically contemporaries. Yeah.
Well, and it's definitely part of that grim,
Same
dark
feel
where the world is fairly amoral, if not corrupt and evil, and it's a dark but you have these characters who struggle with their own goodness in the midst of it, and I think The Witcher more than Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones even the characters within Game of Thrones are pretty amoral. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, like, even the one good guy, they cut off his head in the first book. I mean,
Right.
spoiler alert, I guess. But, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And but it seems like the main characters that what's his name? How do you say his-
Sapkowski.
Yeah. That he kind of has put in there seem to have a little bit more of their own morality, at least. Kind of a thieves kind of morality, like, you know, within themselves, they have this sort of like morality and why they do what they do. And I kind of like that, even though it's different. You
Right.
know.
And I think what also makes it work is that he is focusing on it more from the characters' point of view of developing characters and all that, because he was really developing Geralt and what it is to be a Witcher and what it is to like go out and do these almost like monster of the day type hunts, and then within that he develops the broader world, and you get, you know, little snippets here and there, and then once he kind of really knew where he was going with the world, then he starts doing a lot more with the sorcerers and brotherhood and court of mages, and so you get a lot more of the political stuff once they're together and talking. But it's like he started first with a compelling character, someone that's, you know, looked down on by normal people, even like the rundown peasants and people like that, like these everyday folk that aren't anything special themselves are still very weary and leery of a Witcher, because
He's almost like
he's like an outcast.
He's like the
among
Spider-Man.
outcasts. Yeah.
You know, like he's kind of like that. That's what makes Spider-Man such a great character.
Yeah.
Is like he's saving people, and yet he's being made out to be this huge villain.
Right.
You know. So let's get into the episode. So we're going to try to do the first 4 episodes in this episode in this podcast today. I actually think that they did an amazing job with that first episode.
Yeah.
Because they really introduced, I feel, his character.
Yeah.
They really introduced Ciri and what happened to her. Mm-hmm. And we'll get to the time difference thing, which it was kind of confusing.
It was a little confusing at first.
I don't think they did a great job with that. But at least in that first episode, by the end of it, you got a really good idea of who Geralt was as a character.
Yeah.
Like the fact that kind of like he had this morality of his own. Like he wasn't just going to let this girl, Renfrey, this woman, go
kill a bunch of people to get to the person that she really wants to get at.
Yeah. And even though he didn't like the guy.
Right.
Like it wasn't like he was trying to protect this wizard.
Right. He didn't want to kill her.
He didn't want to kill her, and they have this little romantic interlude, and they really kind of understand each other, and she's, you know, it's kind of a nice moment.
Yeah.
And yet he feels like he has to stand up for what he feels is right. He can't let this go down.
Yeah.
And he saves the girl, and he does this fairly heroic thing, at least in his mind. And yet then
it's
misconstrued, and the wizard plays on people's fears, and you know, they're throwing rocks at him.
He becomes the outcast.
The girl that he saves is like, you just need to leave, and it's such a great introduction of his character,
right?
And yet at the same time,
like as he's saving this village, he gets labeled the Butcher of Blaviken.
Right, exactly.
Like
the fight scene was amazing.
Yeah. I love the swordplay.
Oh, the swordplay was cool. It was very violent. So obviously, if anyone's listening to this and you haven't seen The Witcher, just know there's boobies, there's nudity,
yes,
there's sex scenes, there's
violence. It opens with crazy, scary, monster-looking Kikamura that he beheads.
Yeah.
So just be aware of that.
But at the same time, just the whole thing with Ciri and kind of going through the character of the grandmother and really this, not that they took their time with it, but they kind of took their time with it, just really kind of building that story. And I got to say, man, it was kind of emotional there towards the end of that first episode where Ciri's telling her grandmother, I love you, and you know, you got to find this. And of course, the first time going through it, since I hadn't read the books yet, I had no clue about this whole story. It seemed out of left field to me. But at the same time, not in a bad way. But it's like, you need to find this Witcher.
Yeah.
You need to find this dude.
Yeah.
And you don't have the backstory yet.
Right.
And I have to say, honestly, I really like this.
That's the way they did it, with a little bit of mystery to it. Yeah.
Well, it was a little bit of mystery to it, but instead of giving me all that backstory first, they start with the problem.
Yeah.
Like, that's why I love the first episode, is they start with the problem. Here's the Witcher character.
Yeah.
He's a loner, but this girl now really needs him. Like, they start with the basic problem of the whole show.
Yeah.
And they just set it up really well, I think.
Well, and they do a good job of making Ciri, the girl, look innocent and helpless, and she's being hunted down by this guy, like this black rider that's like right on her tail, and you know, they've taken over her whole city and all that, and her grandmother tells her, you need to find this guy. This is your hope, basically. And so you as a viewer is going, when are they going to find each other? When is she going to find him?
Yeah.
Because you're thinking, like, this is her only hope. This is her... They use destiny a lot.
Yeah.
In
That's kind of their name for God or religion in a lot of ways.
But it makes you as a viewer go, okay, I know what the goal is. And now you're sitting there waiting to see... Like, you're getting this scene here and this scene here, and you're going, oh, they're so close. It's getting closer, and like Geralt's being told, your destiny is the girl in the woods.
Yeah.
You're going to meet the girl in the woods.
Exactly.
And so you as the viewer are primed for it to happen.
And so you know the conflict and the goal of the story right in that first episode. And so I really think it was well done.
Yeah.
That even though they kind of played with a timeline, and I think it was a little confusing.
It was at first.
But it did make sense eventually. You kind of got to it, and it was okay. It didn't make it like so confusing you couldn't enjoy it. But I just really think the writers really did a great job, because I haven't read all of the Witcher books. There are a ton of Witcher books, and now you've got all the games. How many games? There's
3,
probably.
But the third game is hours and hours long. And not to go too far in this tangent, but what's great about the games and why everyone loves the games is there are multiple endings that you can get depending on the choices you make along the way. So, especially within the main storyline quest, you're always given these like really hard choices of, do I do this for this benefit, or do this for the benefit of this character?
Right.
And depending on what you do, someone's going to die, or someone's going to, be an ally.
Yeah.
And then that changes the whole outcome of the game in the end.
That's pretty cool.
So it's a very heavily influenced on storytelling and story-driven.
Almost like a podcast where you let people make choices.
Choose your choices. So that's where people really like that game, because it has a replay value.
Yeah. Good.
And one of the things we'll get to, not to jump too far ahead, but one of the biggest choices to make is choice of who is Geralt going to have as his love interest.
Oh,
because
okay.
there's kind of like, there's a choice between Triss and Yennefer.
Yeah, okay, I see.
There's even an ending where if you try to choose both of them, they punk you.
Yeah, sure. Good. Yeah.
So
I don't think you want to deal with two mages like that.
No, it doesn't work out in your favor. But let's get back to the actual Netflix series. In episode 1, what they do really well setting up is they tell you Geralt is a monster hunter.
Yeah.
He's paid coin to take care of these creatures that no one else can deal with, or no one else has the skill to deal with.
He's kind of like a necessary evil in a lot of people's lives, right?
Yeah.
Like they call him in, but they don't like him.
And the reason why these monsters are here is because within the backstory of the world, there are like parallel multiverse.
Okay.
And within a certain time period, I forget what it's called
Yeah, they talk a little bit about that in the book.
Yeah.
They don't go into it in the show.
But basically, there's a certain time period.
Spheres and stuff?
Yeah, when the spheres line up and it opens a portal for these monsters from another realm to come in. So they invade this realm, and then witchers are basically there to take care of those creatures. But in episode 1, his biggest hurdle or his biggest confrontation is not with a monster, it's with a human. And they show how humans themselves can oftentimes be bigger monsters than these Kikomoras,
I really think they did a great job with that first episode. And they did a good job with writing overall, and we can get into that. But I think a couple things were a little off to me, but
if you notice, even they're playing off of classic fairy tale story lines to a degree, like very loosely in some points. And so Renfear is actually sort of more like a Snow White sort of storyline.
Yes, she was. You're right.
And she's a princess that was run off by an evil sorceress mage because he wants to kill off all these girls that were born during the time of an eclipse because of they're
like a mutation or something.
Well, yeah, there was a prophecy that the girls born under the eclipse will bring destruction to the world. So he gets on this high horse and on this mission to rid the world of all of them. And she happens to be a princess that was at that time, and her mother's like, "Oh, she's going to destroy the world. Okay, I'll just give her to you." And
and I think the other cool theme in that first episode was the lesser evil.
Yes, they
kept bringing that up. And again, I have to just give some kudos to the writers of the show because they're not all the same writers. I mean, they're written by some different people. So I think another thing that they do really well is they keep the themes really consistent.
Okay.
Like with the characters and what they want and what they're after, what their individual morality is.
Yeah.
Like they really keep it really consistent. And I really like that about the show. So first episode, amazing.
Yeah.
All right. I also think the second episode was pretty
amazing.
Goodness.
Yes. Second episode was one of the first times where you're like really feeling sorrowful for a character.
Oh my God!
Like even the name of the episode is 4 marks.
Oh, so beautiful.
And the whole
sad, beautiful, sad,
beautiful, sad. So the character Yennefer, her storyline is about 50 to 60 years before Ciri's storyline. So a lot of people say Ciri, just label it as present day,
right?
And then Geralt's story is about 20 years previous to that. And Yennefer's is about 50, 60 years previous to that.
Which we don't know. I didn't.
Not until like episode 3 or 4.
3 or 4.
And they don't ever really say it quite explicitly
And we'll
either.
get to the hint where I went, what the crap?
Yeah.
Like all of a sudden. Yeah, go ahead. But episode 2.
So Yennefer starts off, she's this despicable, despised character, hunchback, deformed. Her real family gave her up, or she's not with her real father and mother or whatever, and she's with this, guy who raised her, but he despises her because she's just deformed and sort of a burden, and she tries to help out and whatnot, like she's feeding slop to the animals and whatnot. And
she even says, I want to do it myself. Like,
right.
Like you even get that core of her character.
Yeah.
It's a really good show, don't tell moment where she's trying to reach out as that couple is kind of getting all amorous in the barn.
Yeah.
And then she portals herself away, so she's got power.
Right. Well, because they end up turning on her and they're like kind of threatening her in a way. She's feeling threatened, and then she blinks out and ends up at the sorcerer's tower where with this mage who's practicing. He's like
Istrid or something. What was his name?
Istrid, and he's like, do you realize what you just did?
Yeah, who are you? Like, so we get this. They show us that she's got power. Mm-hmm. Like as writers, I really notice these things. As a writer, I'm like, okay, they just showed me she's powerful, but she's deformed, and which already makes you like her, not like her, but like relate to her. Like you're sympathetic towards her.
You're rooting for her,
but then when she's doing stuff with the pigs, it literally takes 5 seconds, and I really wish writers could get this.
Yeah.
It's a save the cat moment.
Yeah.
Where literally it took 5 seconds for her to fall down because she's deformed, and her father goes, "Stop it, I'll do it." She goes, "No, I want to do it myself." Like, it tells you everything you need to know about her in that 5 seconds. And I thought it was great. It's just great writing.
Yeah. And then in that same breath, like within the same scene, they showed you how he valued her as a person. So the reason why Istrid, the guy, he ends up opening a portal for her to send her back because you got to get out of here. If they know that you have powers, she's going to come after you.
Right.
And he's like, I'm going to port you out. You know, hopefully it was supposed to be a non-traceable or whatever. Well, she ends up back there and she's falling down and her dad is you know, like already on top of her. Well, the lady shows up.
Yeah. Tissia or something?
Tessa.
Tissia or something.
Yeah, Tissia. And she is like, "How much for the pig?" And the dad says, 10 marks. And she goes, "How much for that beast?" And gestures towards Yennefer. And he's like, 6 marks. And then she retorts, "I'll give you 4. And then the father goes, "Okay." And it's just right then, which in that little dialogue, you get like, oh my gosh, like he values her less than a pig, and he's willing to part with her on a whim just because he's frustrated with her.
And the mom comes out, "No, you can't do this." And he's like, "Look." And you don't realize until later that's not her real dad.
Right.
Because her dad was a half-elf or something.
Yes.
Which is part of the reason she's deformed. Which, again, makes me a little mad.
Yeah.
Because I haven't shown it yet, but in my world, like, they do discuss the problem that could happen with cross-species. Yeah. Not species, but different races like elves and dwarves and stuff having kids, is they could be deformed or they could be something, right? So I'm like, at the same time, dang it, I had that idea.
So at the same time it gave her deformity, it also is the source that gives her power.
Yes.
And the reason why this lady comes after her is because she is in charge of...
She's the head of Aretuza.
Yeah, which is basically the training ground for sorceresses. And so she basically gets Yennefer and forces her into this whole thing. But Yennefer is still not... She doesn't want it. Like, she doesn't want this. She's just been so degraded.
Yeah.
She sees a reflection of herself, and she just says, 4 marks.
Yeah.
Like, it's eating her up. Like, she's like, I have no value. He just sold me for less than a pig.
Yeah.
He just, I don't like the way I look. She punches the mirror, shards of glass fall, and then she starts considering, I'm just going to end it here. I don't want to be here. I don't know who these people are. They're after me. I've been sold. And so she gets brought down to this debased point where she tries to kill herself. And, of course, it doesn't work. She's stopped. And it's the first step in her journey of, like, realizing there's something more for you. You know, there's more to your story than what you're seeing here and now in this present state.
Well, and again, they just keep showing in a really cool way her character. They keep showing us she's going to kill herself. She hits the mirror. Like, she's an active character. And again, we've talked about this on some of our writing podcasts, but she's an active character. Yeah. The Witcher is an active character. These are active characters, and that's what you need in some of these stories to really pull the reader or the watcher along. And so she doesn't follow rules. You know what I mean? Right. In order for her to be active, she's not a rule follower. She breaks the rules. She pulls down lightning from, in that little tower thing, and like, so there's all these things that she does that shows us she's really powerful, but she's deformed, but she can't control it, and she's resisting this lady trying to help her and teach her, but kind of weird, turning her students into eels and like all this stuff.
And so the whole thing with that is like, Yennefer still sees herself as this failure. Like, she can't do it the way these other girls are doing it. And like, instead of just catching the lightning, she almost absorbs it and then redirects it.
Right.
And so Tisea is like, she knows this is something different.
Yeah.
And so those other girls get invited to the graduation.
Right.
And again, Yennefer's like, I wasn't chosen. And so she tries to sneak in. She's kind of spying on them and whatever. And then we see, like, wait a minute, she just turned them into eels. And then
So
when you
weird.
find out, like, this is not a real graduation. These people yes, they have power, but they're not in control of the chaos.
Or they're not powerful enough to really be the kind of people
that they're training them
up to be.
And so they end just using them as a power source,
as a conduit. All that stuff.
And so then
so weird.
you find Yennefer finds out, like, oh, like, I am something different than these girls.
Yeah.
And as much as she's fighting against being different all her life, like, that's what she's been kept her separate from people, and what she's tried to fight against is, like, I don't want to be different. I want to be like everyone else. But in the end, her power, the difference in what she can do is what ends up elevating her to the next stage. And there's a whole interlude with Stregobor, which is the guy that the mage in the first one. Like, we don't like him. No, he's not a good guy. And then you find out that Istred, which is kind of Yennefer's, like, little love interest, is reporting to Stregobor. Yeah. So then there's this, and like,
she's reporting on
spy.
him.
Yeah, they're, like, spying on each other. So they have all that kind of intrigue going on. But in the end, she is on the path to become one of these sorceresses, and then what they do politically is they pair up these sorceresses with leaders of different cities. So they'll be, the archmage or the sorceress to a king. And I don't remember if it was, I think it's in the third episode, but we find out, like, she is set to go to a very preferable kingdom. Like, she's gonna have it all made for her, but then when the secret of her elven blood, that she's a quarter elf, they change it all. They take it from her. Like, oh no, we can't send her there.
Right, because of the racism of that.
Right.
So going back to episode 2. So the part I didn't like about episode 2, I liked it, but there were definite elements of the Witcher show. So it's only 8 episodes. Mm-hmm. There were definite elements that really weren't about pushing the story forward. And one of them was the Witcher just coming across the Sylvan and the elves, and they capture him.
Right.
And it's almost like an episode of, like, an 80s fantasy show would have been.
Like a Star Trek. Like, he got captured by the aliens.
It's like this total filler episode.
But then he ends up just talking his way out of it.
He just talks his way out of it. Like, it was really just to show up. It was almost like an after-school special. And I don't mean that I don't believe that there's racism. I do. I mean, I believe that there's racism, and I get what they were trying to show. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, that part of the episode, the part about Yennefer was amazing to me. It was so good.
Yeah.
But the part about where he's, like, with Philandrel or whatever, the former king, and he's kind of talking with him and all this stuff, like, it almost felt like filler episode material. Mm-hmm. And this kind of happens a couple times with the show, and I totally get when you have all this material that you can pull from.
Yeah,
you want to show stuff. There's so much of the world, so many stories, so many characters. You want to do something with it, but I really felt like there were some times, and we'll get to some other ones here in the first few episodes, where it was almost like a filler episode.
Right.
Like,
like the first 3 episodes definitely had a monster of the day feel. Like, in the second episode, he's got to go find the what do they call it? Like the devil,
the Sylvan,
yeah,
Torque.
Yes, and so he goes hunting on that thing, and really that whole setup was so that we could get the great song from Dandelion.
Could get the great song, right?
Dandelion in the books and the game, but Jaskier in the show. But yeah, basically what he does is they show how Geralt is made the most well-known or famous Witcher because of what his bard does for him.
Yeah.
By
making up the song.
Yes.
And he's like, hey, that's not how it happened.
Elaborating on the situation.
Yeah. And again, that's really cool. As a writer, I'm like, man, that was a real opportunity to move
the story
forward.
Yeah.
And like, I really think with Yennefer, throughout almost all 8 episodes, there wasn't a filler moment with Yennefer. Almost every moment that you have with Yennefer builds on her character and moves her somewhere.
Yeah.
And some of that happens with Geralt too. But there are definitely some filler moments with Ciri and Geralt. Or Geralt, or whatever you say his name.
Geralt.
Yeah. Like, there's definitely some filler moments with these characters where you're like, that didn't mean anything.
Right, yeah.
Like, that was a filler episode. That was Buck Rogers' episode number 10 of the second season. Like this, it was just a cool idea, and they made a little story out of it.
Still better than the Mandalorian filler episode.
They're about equal to me. Yeah. So anyway, so then Ciri, by the way, comes against this elf, or meets up with this elf character.
He
Dara.
saves her from eating poisonous berries.
Which it was kind of cool, and that kind of leads us into the end of episode 3. She's at this refugee camp, which is cool. And they have some cool things that they show with that.
Right.
But again, it's a little, not a lot of moving forward with Ciri.
What they're showing there is like, it's one of those yes, but moments. Like, yes, she's found this refugee camp, people that are going to take care of her, someone to protect her, but she's still being pursued hardcore by this Black Knight.
Right.
And the Nilfgaardian forces just show up and decimate the camp and everything, and she has to be saved from that.
Right.
So that is where kind of what they set up with her there.
Right. So then we get into episode 3. Mm-hmm. There's again some amazing moments in episode 3,
but not the sex scene. That was just unneeded. That was the
I
one.
forget which one was the sex scene.
I think that was the sex scene with Yennefer and Istred. Where
that was unnecessary.
It was just like, why are we doing this right now?
Some of the sex scenes and some of the nudity.
Yeah,
most of the nudity was definitely unnecessary.
It was a background.
It was background. Flavor. It was just like, she's. I guess she's got to be naked in this scene for some reason.
Yeah.
But right. That scene was unnecessary. But so they're becoming lovers, which I thought was really interesting in the sense of the story. I thought that was interesting.
It's the first person that's loving her for who she is.
Yeah, right. Like,
but at the same time, he's betraying her.
But he's betraying her, right? Which totally gives us background into her character, and then and it's all the stuff you were talking about earlier with she has this ability to go to this great kingdom, and it's a job, like her dream job kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I really like how they set this up, that because you start to get the hints in episode 3. This is where you start to get the hints that the timelines are off.
Yes.
Because
that was the first time I remember
in the first episode, you have Nilfgaard, or whatever their name is.
Nilfgaardians,
The Nilfgaardians, they're coming in, killing everybody in Sintra and all that stuff. And so then
but you're also getting Yennefer's story and Geralt's story at the same time.
You're getting all this stuff at the same time, and it's not until episode 3 that you realize, this stuff is way before that other stuff, because they're talking about, Salantha and all these people like they're still around. And this stuff hasn't happened yet. So my point is that while it was confusing on the one hand before your brain kind of adjusted, at the same time I thought it was cool because they're giving some background as to her choice had an effect on history.
Yeah.
Like the fact that she manipulated the situation through a really amazing and graphic and disturbing scene of her changing her body.
Yep.
But the fact that she manipulated her way into her dream job, like this keeps coming up in the story. Like she could have been at Nilfgaard, and she could have maybe helped peace happen. But instead, she had to have this dream job, which was more, they were corrupt and stupid and blah, blah, blah. And they kind of go into that in episode 4. But then all that to say is, like, she could have had this job that went to Frigilla or whatever her name was.
Frigilla, yep. And
Fringilla, which she's an interesting character, too.
Yeah, she's
But
BA,
all that to say is, like, I really liked that setup where they were, like, they're showing you, like, the effects of that decision, which happened in episode 1.
Yeah.
And that's the first time that my brain went, what?
Yeah.
Was when Moltes, the king, remember, because Moltes and Ada, the Witcher was dealing with them and their kingdom because of the Striga.
Right.
And so Ada was dead, and this is the baby, and crawled out of her. That's really weird graphic.
Yes,
it's awesome.
Striga, yes.
Like, I mean, such dark fantasy. I love it.
Right. It still has like the umbilical cord dragging along the way. And I think they did a great job of that too. In some of these episodes, not showing the creature right away, but like showing like little bits, like the
very
umbilical
cool,
cord and
very horror,
and the scratch marks on the kid. That's trying to tell his story, and he thinks it's a werewolf, and talking about all this and that, and they did a very good job of like giving you little bits.
Yes.
Before showing you the character.
So that was the first moment
where like,
she's in the banquet kind of.
Yeah, the brotherhood of the sorceresses.
And all the kings are there and the mages, and they're kind of setting people up. It's really kind of a cool little scene.
Yeah.
But then you see Moltes or whatever his name is. What's his name? Moltes? And then Ada, and they're like,
wait a minute, I thought she was dead.
How are they kids? And like, that's the first time he's like, oh, maybe these timelines are off.
Yeah. Yep.
But the part I loved about that episode, I mean, I liked a lot of things about the episode.
Yeah.
Number one, there wasn't any filler that I remember. The whole thing with the Witcher and the Striga, it showed so much of his character.
Right. Because he's tasked with not killing this beast, but saving her. And he takes on the task because he does have some sort, even though the process that he goes through to become a Witcher really dulls him of emotions, and he doesn't have emotions the same way that normal people would, but he has enough that he's like, okay, I will try and save her for you and undo the curse rather than just kill her. And
I love the investigation kind of thing that he did. Like, he's kind of like trying to figure out.
Yeah.
Like, if I'm going to save her, I got to figure out what happened. Like, how did this happen?
Right.
And I loved that part.
Because
I loved all the stuff with Jennifer.
Everyone was saying it was like a werewolf type of character, and he's like, this doesn't seem like it. And he had to really talk about it. And then he's like, when he figures out, oh, this is your wife had a baby and she died while carrying the baby, and then he finds out, oh, you guys are actually brother and sister. The king and the sister had, and then he was trying to hide it, and he's like, oh, this is not a werewolf, this is a Striga. And he's like, now I know what I'm dealing with. Now I know how to handle it. Now I know how to set it free. But there was the whole, like, he had to uncover that mystery.
Which is it was really cool to me because it was kind of a monster of the week thing.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it built on his character because he would have needed to know all that stuff about different monsters. Like, if he's a monster killer, like, he would need to be able to figure out what am I fighting and how do I fight it and all that stuff.
A great part of the game, is they really focus on that, and they tell you, when you're going to go kill this monster, you have a bestiary. You have a book of beasts and monsters. And as you discover new monsters, you get new excerpts within the bestiary. So when you go to fight something, they tell you, don't just go into battle without knowledge, but actually stop in the game and read your bestiary. Read what its weaknesses are, read what weapons work against it, and then arm yourself for that fight. So that it's great how they do it in the game, and even in this storyline within the show. I thought they did a great job of showing that.
They totally did. And just one final thing about the episode. Well, I loved the cut back and forth at the end with him fighting the Striga.
Yes.
And Yennefer's
making her
transformation.
So she wasn't going to do the transformation at first. But then when it got taken away from her, she's like, I'm going to do it. And the transformation is they turn these women into beautiful sorceresses.
Yeah.
They give them these beautiful, but at the cost of losing their ability to bear a child.
Right.
So basically they take their uterus or whatever, and she, like, that was one of her things that she really wanted to be able to do was give birth to a child. But she's like, you know what? To get what I want, I'm going to go through the sacrifice.
See, I think it's interesting because I don't think she really had that desire at first. Because
not at first.
What they bring up later is that because the choice was taken away,
she
didn't realize what she had given up. She was so hungry for power and to find
beauty.
worth and beauty.
It's the
and
thing
all
that she had desired this whole time was I can be something that I've wanted to be this whole time. I've been this deformed, rejected person, and now I have a way that I can have what I want and be beautiful. But they do a great juxtaposition of Geralt undoing the curse of the Striga.
Yes.
And the transformation,
undoing one curse,
cutting back and forth.
I loved it.
So, like, she's being cursed with beauty, essentially, while the Striga is being undone coming out of being a monster and coming back to being a human.
Yes.
And he says a very profound thing to the king when he returns his daughter to him, is that she's only known a life of hatred and cruelty and violence.
Yeah.
And so she's going to have to learn what it means to be human. And it's echoing of what he's gone through all his life.
Yeah.
Like he has been this outcast. He's only known violence and being looked down on, being outcasted.
Yeah.
And so they build up this great like explanation of what's happening between Yennefer and the Striga, and even how Geralt kind of.
But really, what they're setting
together.
up, and again, as I watched it through a second time, really what they're setting up is that relationship between Geralt and Yennefer.
Yeah.
Like, he does that with Yennefer.
Yeah.
Like, he brings something out of her.
Yeah.
That is human and that is real and loving and kind, and like we can get to that story kind of later what all happens, but I just thought, I was like, man, they really did a good job thinking through this.
Yes.
Like and they really did a good job. And I remember even the first time I watched it, that episode 3, I was like on the edge of my seat watching those last 20 minutes.
Yeah. It's a setup.
Phenomenal.
You know that it's a setup for what's to come, and you're like, okay, everyone just made some pretty significant transformation within this episode.
And you know what? Like, you know, this is something from Save the Cat, and just for writers to understand, like, The Witcher does a good job going to what the writer of Save the Cat, Blake or whatever his name is, what he says is primal emotions, right? Like, really universal, understandable goals, right? The Witcher wants to be human. Like, he's almost like a Data, almost like
right.
Like the Witcher wants to be human, but he doesn't at the same time.
Right.
Like, he's got this inner struggle with that, his own morality. Yennefer wants power. Like Ciri wants
power and
safety.
Yes.
Like they all have these like primal urges and needs, and it makes it compelling writing.
Yeah.
And you can have the details different, which is what makes each story different, but it's really something to understand about writing. Like, you have to make these urges primal.
Yeah.
And I was watching a movie recently. I won't say the name of the movie offhand, but at the end of it, I was like, it was okay. And I had somebody tell me it was a great movie, so I checked it out on Netflix.
Yeah.
And I was like, why didn't I like it? And I started thinking about it. I was like, there was nothing primal in it.
Their motives weren't believable.
The motives weren't believable. Like, why is he putting... Because if you want... Here's the reason. All right, writers, ready? Mm-hmm. If you want to put your characters in a situation where they're willing to give their life for something, you have to make the motivation as central and universal and primal as you possibly can.
Yeah, and it's got to resonate with their
characters'
wants or needs or goals.
So we go into episode 4, and oh my gosh, it's totally my thing. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't really filler because they ended up doing something, again, amazing with Yennefer's character through this part of the story. Mm-hmm. But the whole assassin coming after that queen and the kid and her trying to like figure out how is he tracking you and like the monster, the creature that was with the oh my gosh, that whole part was like, that is the coolest thing.
Right, she's so jumping through portals and
he can track her.
Yeah,
and then she
got a little like praying mantis, a large praying mantis creature.
And just like the background is that you're not giving him a male heir. Like, it's so twisted. Like, there's so much of it that was so engaging to me.
Yeah.
And then, just that whole scene, that whole interchange.
Yeah.
Where then she tries to save the baby.
Right, because the mother ends up being selfish rather than self-sacrificing. She's like, just take the baby and save me. Let him have...
I'll give him a boy.
Yeah. Yeah.
I promise I'll give him a boy.
And so Yennefer makes a decision. I'm not going to save this lady. I'm going to save the baby. She grabs the baby, teleports one more time.
But the assassin...
Yeah.
Comes through, ends up not... kind of trying to kill both of them, but ends up killing the baby.
Yeah.
It's just this really amazingly written little scene where she's talking to the dead baby.
Right.
It's so sad. But again, like, I can't think of, maybe I'll think of one later, but I can't think of a moment in Yennefer's story in the show that was filler. Like, it was, like, even the cool parts and the fighting, like, you understood something about her in that moment.
And my goodness, like, the way they take her to the next level in episodes 7 and 8 with those fighting scenes,
it's so good.
They elevate it greatly. So at the end of episode 3, Cirilla and Ciri ends up in the woods with those druids.
Yes.
Or the
dryads.
The dryads. And she's there with the elven boy. And the whole thing is, once you're here, you can't leave. We're going to make you one of us. Yeah. So she's going through that whole...
That was a filler episode.
Yeah, for her.
It totally felt like the whole time I'm like, there's no reason you're here.
It had nothing. Yeah, there was no
she didn't
impact
get anything
to her
out of
character.
it.
Yep, exactly.
She didn't get anything out of it. She didn't get like a special sword or something. I mean, I know that's kind of cliche and trope, but like, she didn't get anything out of it. Like, it was just. Now, I do like. We'll get to one part of it probably in the next episode, but I do like the whole storyline of the marriage proposal. So the Witcher is drugged to this banquet,
like a ball,
by Jaskier.
Yes.
Now, I will say they didn't really set up the Witcher's motivation why he's there. Mm-hmm. He like he says, I don't want to be there. Right. Blah, blah, blah. Like, although you kind of get this begrudgingly, I really like this Jaskier guy.
Yeah.
Like, we really are kind of friends.
Right.
And he's all the time trying to push him away. So he really is trying to save this guy's butt, maybe, or he's trying to just kind of put,
right, make sure that he doesn't get himself into too much trouble.
But that whole storyline where it sets up,
yes.
Oh,
this is why
he needs to meet their destiny.
Yeah.
And so that was cool.
So going back to the way that they're kind of retelling these classic fairy tales, is that episode is really like a Beauty and the Beast story. Mm-hmm. You get the girl who's in love with this guy who's cursed to look like a hedgehog, essentially.
Yeah, he was.
He's a monster. He's a beast, and she loves him because after midnight he turns back to himself, and so they had met up after midnight, and they had their fling, and she's to be betrothed to someone. Her mother is trying to set her up with someone that's going to advance the kingdom, that's going to be beneficial for the politics of everything. And he shows up in disguise to win the hand of the girl that he loves. And it's, of course, revealed who he is, and they're like, kill him. He's a monster who's trying to usurp my daughter's hand in marriage.
She tries to get the Witcher. Like, there's this whole cool exchange between her and the Witcher where they're becoming friends, and she's trying to order her eyes. Like, no.
He's like, no, that's not what I do. But then he does step in when the guy's about to be killed by one of her guards or whatever. The Witcher steps in and saves them, and he's like, look, this guy is not a beast. He's not a monster. He's been cursed. He's a guy. He's like, I can tell that or whatever. And so it's all revealed. Yada yada yada. They have this fighting scene.
You also get a little bit of the background of Ciri's power.
Yes,
because her mom freaks out because Salantha or whatever her name is the queen is gonna kill this guy. She's like, oh, I got your destiny for you.
Yeah,
she's about to kill this guy, and she's freaks out. What's her Parvata or whatever her name is?
Yeah. Parvata.
Parvata freaks out, and now she's got this amazing power.
Yeah.
And which kind of gives you a clue. But now by episode 4, right?
Yeah.
The timelines are all off.
Yeah.
And so you're getting background about what happened. And by that point, I'm enjoying that.
Yes. Because you're able to follow along.
At episode 3, I was like, what the crap are they doing? Like, what's happening right now?
And it's kind of fun. You're like, wait a minute, that person's not dead, but she killed herself in episode 3. Okay, so we're in the past at this point. Yeah.
And so I just really like that. And of course, he's like, look, whatever. He's like, no, I have to give you something or else I'm going to be ashamed or whatever that I'm in your debt. He goes, fine, just give me the surprise thing. Just give me the
law of surprise.
Just give me the surprise thing.
Yeah.
And it turns out
she throws up right then. And she's like, oh, I'm pregnant. Surprise. And then Geralt's like, crap.
Yeah. And you get this background like with him and Mousesack, like, oh, they're kind of friends, which by the way happens in the book, at least in the first book that I've been reading. Like, Geralt's known.
Yes.
Like, and that's kind of part of the thing with the whole Bard issue. Like, he's well known. And that's part of why they bring in the Bard, is because like he's become famous for his exploits. And so anyway, but he actually does have some real relationships with some of these people. Yeah. So all that to say is...
and Dunny, the guy that is a hedgehog,
right?
We are introduced to this whole law of surprise idea because he had actually saved Parvata's dad earlier and had said, well, just give me the law of surprise. And then she had come along and come home. And so he ended up basically being promised her hand in marriage through that law of surprise thing, but her mom didn't want to adhere to it. She didn't want to give credence to this law of surprise, but they're like, it's destiny, you have to, or else you're going to be cursed.
Yeah.
And so then you realize how powerful that is, or how serious it is, and then when it happens to Geralt, then you're like, oh crap, now he just got himself in a situation.
And here's again what I love, like, by episode 4, I'm liking this timeline thing.
Yeah.
I'm enjoying it. Because just like you get an idea of the consequences of Yennefer's decision while she's making it. This is good writing to me.
Yeah.
Like, she's making this decision about, no, I'm not going to go to Nilfgaard. I'm going to go here. And then this kind of freaky girl, Fringilla, is going to go to Nilfgaard. And you know, like, oh, what happens later now.
Yeah. Yep.
So you know the consequences of her choice. Now you know the consequences of Geralt's choice, right? Because Mousesack is like, look, if you don't take this seriously, you're going to be cursing us. And he's like, that's not my problem,
right?
But that's what happens.
Yep.
Like, you get all these problems, and so I kind of like this. It's really kind of a on the fence thing. Like, it's difficult to like characters who are responsible for so much destruction.
Right.
But they did a good job making us like these characters because they're not doing it to kill people. They're not doing it. They're doing it to try to stay true to themselves.
Yeah.
But at the same time, his choice, the Witcher's choice, has had real effects.
Right. because he tries to deny it and almost go away from destiny. He tries to like whatever I'm not gonna take this girl. I'm just gonna leave her be. I'm gonna let her have her life. I'm not gonna try and take her for myself or whatever. And that ends up being the very reason why the city is overthrown by the Nilfgaardians, because basically Dunny, the guy that was Curse of the Hedgehog, when that curse is lifted, he goes back to be the king, and then he starts coming after everyone to try and get back to Cirilla, because he's like, that's my daughter, and I want to find her. Yeah. And
so again, they stayed true to the conflict.
Yeah.
Who the Witcher is and the goal of getting him to this girl. So I think that's it for this episode, man. We've done 4 episodes.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to do a to be continued.
To be continued on this, because there's so much to say.
There's so much more.
And we haven't even gotten into a lot of the game and all that. So look forward to that in the next episode. We're going to talk about episodes 5, 6, 7, and 8. And then we'll talk about some of the choices that can be made in the future and then within the game and all that. But until then, raise a glass to inspiration. Stay inspired, guys.
Stay inspired, guys.